Apologies in advance for my pronunciation of some of the names in this video. For more than 20 years, a depraved killer was luring the boys of the Soviet city of Nevanomysk to their deaths. 7 are known to have died at his hands, but many more were taken to the woods and subjected to bizarre patterns of abuse. His victims were gently hanged until they were unconscious, but so that their necks would not break. Then he took them down and photographed the atrocities he committed against them. Not all of his victims would survive the ordeal. He even filmed some of these bizarre hanging rituals, and the videos can still be found online today. Anatoly Slivko, the child's hangman. Anatoly Slivko was born on December 28, 1938, in the Soviet city of Iverbash. Not much is known of his childhood aside from the fact that he knew he was gay at an early age. Despite this, he married a woman named Ludmila in 1967, and the pair settled in Nevanomysk. 6 years prior to his marriage, he witnessed an event that would shape his crimes to come. In 1961, Anatoly saw a horrific accident. A drunk man on a motorcycle plowed into a group of people. One of them was a boy wearing a Young Pioneers uniform. The Young Pioneers were a group for boys aged 9 to 15 formed in 1922 when the Boy Scout organization was banned for not supporting the communist regime. The boy was hit hard by the motorcycle and fell to the ground. He convulsed until he died there in the street, and Slivko described later how excited he had become watching the boy slowly die as the air filled with the smell of gasoline and fire. The image was burned into the monster's mind, and soon he would recreate the scene of a dying young pioneer over and over. 2 years after the motorcycle crash, Anatoly Slivko began a youth program and began to prey on the boys that joined. He always seemed to have 1 or 2 favorites a year, who were typically between 11 and 15 years old and of slight build. Part of the creature's scheme was to convince the boys that he knew a way to make them taller. The method was for them to hang from their neck. The hangings took place in the woods and were often photographed and filmed. Once the boys were unconscious, Slivko took them down and abused them. Each time, the monster bought a new Young Pioneers uniform for the victim to wear. 43 boys were known to have been put through this horrific process, and 7 of them were never seen alive again. On June 2, 1964, Slivko killed for the first time. 15-year-old Nikolai Dobryshev had run away from home, and Slivko took him under his wing. He claimed that the boy's death was accidental when he later confessed, and he had not been able to revive him as he had intended and had done with other boys. He panicked and dismembered and buried Nikolai's body, then destroyed the photos that he had taken. But the panic soon subsided, and in May of 1965, he struck again. The victim was a boy named Alexei Kovalenko. The process of dressing him as a young pioneer and hanging him until he was unconscious was the same. However, this time, Slivko intentionally killed his young victim. A year later, the youth club that Anatoly had started had burned down. But the creature was not deterred. He started a new club called Chergrid for Boys, and he waited for 8 years before he killed again. But once again, the victim was a member of his club. On November 14, 1973, he took a 15-year-old named Alexander Nezmenyanov into the woods. The boy would never be seen alive again, and the killer was not done. And though he spaced his killings out, he would not wait another 8 years. The next victim would disappear on May 11, 1975. 11-year-old Andrei Pogosyan told his mother that he was going to take part in a film with Anatoly Slivko in the woods nearby the city. When he vanished, police did not investigate Slivko as he was a known filmmaker and had actually won awards for it in the past. In 1980, Slivko killed a 13-year-old named Sergei Fatsiev. Once again, his victim was a member of the club that the killer ran. 2 years later, he killed a 15-year-old named Slava Kovistik. With the growing number of missing children, police were looking for any leads that they could find, and after another missing child was connected with Slivko, they were not so quick to dismiss him as a suspect. On July 23, 1985, a 13-year-old named Sergei Pavlov told his neighbor that he was going to meet the head of the Chergrid Club. When he never returned home, police began to investigate his disappearance, and they soon zeroed in on the Chergrid Club. Almost all of the victims had been in Anatoly Slivko's club, and prosecutor Tamara Lang was assigned to investigate the disappearances in November of 1985. She started by interviewing the current members, and what she heard from them was disturbing enough, but the boys did not even know the worst of what Slivko had done. Many of the children told the prosecutor that they had periods of time that they could not remember after they spent time with Slivko. This was when they were unconscious and being abused by the monster. And they also told her about the experiments to make them taller by hanging that Slivko had performed. After hearing the same story repeated several times, Lang prepared the police to arrest the club leader in December of 1985 after investigating for 1 month. After what we can only assume was an aggressive interrogation, Anatoly Slivko confessed. He spent January and February of 1986 leading police to the bodies of his victims. They were able to recover all but his first victim's remains. The bodies had either been chopped up or burned, then buried in the woods. The killer had kept the shoes of his victims, and they can be seen in the haunting films that he made. In 1989, Anatoly Slivko was sentenced to death for 7 counts of murder, 7 counts of abusing a child, and 7 counts of abusing a corpse. He was sent to Novocherkassk prison, where he would remain until 1989. In that year, he gave police insights into the mind of a monster to help them better hunt a new serial killer, Andrei Chikatilo, who murdered 52 women and children. Later that same day, the time came for the creature's sentence to be carried out. On September 16, 1989, Anatoly Slivko was executed by a gunshot to the head.